pleasure to hug.
Yeah.
That's how it's looking our life future.
This version of the arms is not fully articulate. It's quite common. Suppose we could put one of the heads on this body. You think two heads on the bodies plus the lineup of heads? You think that's a good?
Your producer, check how it's gonna go.
John's a good DP. I should come around and just look at it from the front also.
Я некоторые вопросы просто не понимаю. Все вот так вот все в порядке. Было бы, конечно, хорошо Эйнштейна, потому что это как бы зайдет немножко.
Что именно?
Вот если голову он поставил Эйнштейн, это немножко по-другому зайдет, что она не одна и их много. Люди хотят об этом знать.
Okay, давай ему скажу.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have some idea. What are you thinking? Also to the translate our universe. For example, because over here we can just see only like Sophia ages, right? If we will bring like the oldest one a little bit closer here to show that we are working also in the other one. One. He say one is going.
What do you think
To
if
put
we
one.
put one man? Because not
Yeah.
much people know about. They think Sophia is one, and that's all.
Yes.
Much people.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to show to the people.
It's still
Tomorrow someone
Yeah.
can do for him like
Yeah.
своего клона, скажи.
Yes, like a copy of someone.
Like a copy of myself, for example.
Yeah.
And it's good.
We've made dozens of different robots.
Yeah.
So this is one.
And let's turn them to us.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is the latest one, so we probably want to make sure that she's visible. How about one also?
Очень важный вопрос, что она не готова стать журналистом на нашем отделе, а именно.
А я именно это уже и задавала.
Ну,
Именно на камеру, да. Я не помню. Я помню. Это одно из самых главных.
One more guy.
Boy, girl, boy, girl.
you want, I will do it.
Thank you.
Really? Wow, it's gonna be my first experience.
Yeah, it's nice.
Let me
Looks good. That's good.
check first.
Do you like better with these off, or do you prefer them on?
What do you see? Let's try.
You want to try them with them on?
So on this place, right?
Yeah, sure. Maybe holding hands.
Нет, в ту сторону, в ту. Не надо сюда, в эту сторону.
Well, I think they may. Oh yeah, and then the arm will go all the way around the piece. No?
The lighting is in в ту сторону, на них, там мало света, именно на них. И вот это вот самое последнее тоже, вот. И последнее. Нет, больше вот на них прям, вот именно на Ген.
Она не выкручивается.
Вот так. Вот так вот лучше всего.
Hopefully I don't just break things.
Нет, да, это тоже нужно провести.
Just lifting your arm up and then having it fall down backwards. Stretches the cables.
Не чудо, да?
Не видно, нормально. Вот так вот, через нее перекинуть. Все отлично. Чуть-чуть дальше. Потому что мы сейчас камеру будем видеть очень большие, понимаешь? Нужно сделать так, чтобы она как-то так села. А если она будет здесь, вот здесь, мы все закроем, поэтому не будет сидеть вот в этой части, понимаешь?
Сейчас засеять, сейчас будет все.
Может вот так надо.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's see the pictures, and my picture will sit in this my
Записывай.
что сзади было видно? Все видно?
Вот лампа, что-то я.
This light is okay.
But we want the faces to be lit.
Все видно.
And we want also the
This
best,
one is, you can see that one
the
is
best face visible.
the youngest one. Why not?
Да, кстати. Let's
Okay.
one here.
This one,
It's
This,
too
this,
many.
this, man.
the man one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really important information. Much people think Sophia at one and that's all.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to show.
Yes. I agree. This one is invisible now. It's okay. It's probably okay. What do you think?
Oh, good.
Oh, I see. There's still. Maybe there's also. Maybe put one here.
Пусть делает так, как он хочет.
Just change it to the side. Maybe you can just
Поговори пока в микрофон.
1, 1, 1, 2, 3. Testing. Can you hear? Но я буду громче говорить.
Very nice.
Like having maybe a little more light on our face. That's good.
No, it's
That's good.
this is much reality. Really?
Okay.
Okay, let us know when we can start. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear us?
Да, слышно все равно.
A bit more up voice, if you want.
Попробуйте его.
As Раз. 1, 2, 3.
John, what do you think of the composition? It's okay?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Great.
Can I make one small adjustment?
Yeah, sure.
The only thing I've changed is taking one of the lights that are over there and putting it on the robot, so they get a little bit more on the faces, so they just get a little more.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Держи и
So I should turn towards you while talking, or talk to
No,
the
I
camera?
think we will have a like discussion. It's
Oh,
also
yeah.
live. We want to have a live. It's
Yeah.
The story, right? The story of the beginning of the Sophia, of your story, of course, because it's important to see the viewers who was doing, how it was processed. About you, we really want to show to our viewers the success people, the result, how the process is going, which background you had, and all this part. If you
Okay.
don't mind, of
I
course.
don't mind.
Amazing, great. So let us know when we can to start. First, I would like to start with the camera.
Let's.
Мгм.
Скажи 1, 2, 3.
Раз. 1, 2, 3.
Ну, так нормально вроде.
Just voice, we should put a little bit up. Our mic is broke, so that's why we use iPhones.
Okay.
Oh, now it's good.
Yes, great. So, we are ready? You ready? Great. Hello to everybody. It's Valerie Zimri of Future Time. Today I have a special guest for you, and right now I would like to take an interview with David Hanson. Hello, David.
Hi.
Great that you find a couple of minutes for us. Thank you for this. And can you actually to introduce yourself for our viewers?
Certainly. I'm the founder and chairman of Hanson Robotics. We make very lifelike robots. Maybe the most famous robot that we've created is Sophia, but we also created a walking portrait of Albert Einstein. We made the robot face that went onto the walking Hubo robot body. We created the Philip K. Dick android. We created the Bina 48 in collaboration with the Terrasim movement. We created very many robots. And we've also created very many Sophia robots, some of whom you can see here around us. My background is a mix of arts and engineering.
How long, excuse me that I'm stopping you actually, yes, it's very important to know about your background. When did you start? How you coming to this industry?
Sure, yeah.
From where you get this amazing idea to make to change our planet?
Well, as a child, I was fascinated with the dreams of science and technology, and I was a very avid student of science as a child. However, it was the dream that artificial intelligence could improve and transform civilization, that it could achieve sentience, that it could awaken someday. This dream seems more tangible than ever today.
Mm-hmm.
But as a child, it drove me to pursue many paths, including the creation of science fiction, writing science fiction, creating films. I studied film at a school called Rhode Island School of Design. And across the street at Brown University, I took classes in computer science, focused on controlling robots and artificial intelligence. I built my first robot at that time. I also
What is your first robot?
My first robot was a telepresence robot. So it was an avatar robot, a self-portrait that was a mobile robot. So it had my face on a mobile robot, and then it would come up for a face-to-face interaction with people. And I built a special helmet that would transmit video from the robot to this headset, heads-up display, and then would track my head motions and then play those on the robot for a remote face-to-face interaction.
So this experience also helping you to create that what we are seeing right now, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe you can also to tell us about the project of the Sophia, about the evolution of this project, how it's starting, and how did you see in the future how it's all looking?
Yes. Well, so I came from this kind of character art background, working at then at Disney Imagineering as a sculptor and then in robotics development, I really perceived that robots and AI could be a great artistic medium, and the artistic practices could transform AI into a more meaningful interface for human AI interaction. So, so this went back to my PhD studies. Then I began studying the formality of human-robot interactions in psychology experiments, while also pushing the materials forward to try to generate better facial expressions, use the very best machine learning and natural language generation, machine perception technologies to see human facial expressions and recognize faces, and put all of these things together into these kinds of characters that would then seem to come to life. While also then studying artificial life, studying the idea that we could make our machines alive. This is, somewhat controversial, but it cuts to the chase of some very deep questions. What does it mean to be alive? Can we make our machines alive? These are not resolved. If we do make our machines alive, how can we make sure that they're safe, that they make the world a better place? I think that the key is to think not just of intelligence, but of wisdom. Because human wisdom is not necessarily just the legacy of our ancestors. Yes, that may be true, but it's the best of who we can be. That's the idea, the idea of intelligence applied for a greater good. There's this Greek word that represents a kind of grand respect and love, the greatest love. Agape is that word. And there is another word that comes from Greek that is the root of philosopher. The idea of Sophia is that Greek root for Sophia, which means wisdom or wise one. So one that can bring great wisdom. Now, of course, Sophia as a character is this childlike being with eyes just opening.
She's just born.
Just born and just learning about the world. And then using the tools of machine learning to learn about the world. So as a real technology platform, we are using these tools. We are creating the most human-like platform for embodied cognition, for the exploration of machines that can learn in deeper ways, that may eventually achieve true artificial general intelligence. These are the dreams. So the dreams that we carry are that the character will eventually become truly alive, truly intelligent, creative, curious, a friend to humanity, and then ultimately capable of the greatest forms of intelligence, showing true wisdom, maybe helping us to become even better. So these were the ideas that were going into the creation of Sophia as a platform. And also, we tried to push, our team tried to push her to become a character that would speak to people all around the world. So as we were designing her, we turned to the faces from history, like Nefertiti, who is considered to be one of the great beauties and leaders of all time. This smart and soulful queen. And so the bust of Nefertiti, you see this great strength, and it has resonated with people throughout time. So that was one of the models for Sophia.
Yes, we see also the charisma of the Sophia. She have emotions when she's speaking, she's smiling, she's she have a great eyes when she can also sometimes to speak with the eyes. I think is it a great how I understand you are create Sophia and robotics to show to the people the better side of us.
That's right. And if we capture that kind of life in the robot, then it can really resonate potentially with people. Good art does this, and we start to project our own experiences and have this kind of dream experience. But characters and figurative art have a special place. They serve as a kind of a deep dreaming mirror for us as humanity to grow. So the arts, in some ways, open portals to human transformation for kind of cultural evolution. So I wanted to put a lot of love into this because I want that to be the future that these kinds of robots bring out. So I also had my wife sit and pose for me, Amanda, sit while I sculpted the Sophia as well. And then I also studied faces. So Nefertiti is from Africa, Asian faces, Inuit faces. So that way we had a representation of people all around the world. So in the past, we've made African American female robot, Bina 48, and we created a Persian male robot with Ibn Sina, and we created a Mexican American robot with the Diego. So we created many different kinds of faces. But if we're going to make one product line, and we are going to turn this into a standard product line that's going to go out, I wanted it to really resonate and speak with people. We also created a male robot at the same
As I
time.
already
Yeah.
can see, right? Here's not only one robot.
That's-
And actually, from this, I want to ask you, of your robots, well, calling Sophia, or how did you see the name of them in the future?
Well, so because we want them to all be wise, we want to have this kind of philosophical approach to robotics. We are calling the entire product line Sophia, and we're planning to put out both improved service robot platform and the next step in her character evolution this year, and we call that Sophia 2020.
Okay, great.
That's
So
for male robots and the female robots
and
as
for
well.
male as well, gonna
Yeah.
be Sophia. It's the well, Sophia is the first version we can to see right now. May give me just a second, excuse me. Yes, and actually, in the future, did you, as you already said, that you don't want to stop in this step what you have right now? In the future, did you planning to do the new humanoid robots?
Yes, we have plans for many new features for our humanoid robots, and you can see some of these with hands. Sophia is holding hands with Sophia in the back of the
It's
room.
already philosophic. Actually, it's the friends, right?
Yeah, and these hands and arms are able to do figure drawing, and previous versions were able to play cards and of course perform gestures. And so this is very important for communication. These hands and arms are designed to work with many of our robots. We're bringing out many of our old robots as well. So we've been showcasing our Einstein and our Philip K. Dick robot and the Bina 48 robot, but we will continue to develop new versions of Sophia. We've made 23 Sophia units, and so this is version 23 that we have in front of us, and we will see version 24, which will be the standardized version that we will be processing off the assembly line as a service robot to come out and help people in real world applications, therapy applications, entertainment, artistic applications, science museum kinds of applications, and scientific research applications. But Sophia as one personality is just one step. So we have also been designing for a robot called Safi, and we have been designing for a number of other robots whose names will be revealed as the year rolls out, and even more robots will come into existence in future years. We've been working for some number of years on a process that I call rapid automated biomimesis. So that biomimesis is the mimicry of life. And so we're applying bio-inspired engineering at many levels. That includes the nanotech that goes into the skin material that facilitates this quality of facial expressions. Also, bio-inspired control systems and cognitive architectures and many components that go into this. But biomimesis is where you're trying to emulate a particular life, mimic the behavior and performance and capabilities of a life form. But to do this, historically, with these kinds of robots, there's been a lot of handcrafted artistry because there's no solution for aesthetic puzzles. Like, I mean, you can't engineer, say, a Georgia O'Keeffe painting from first principles, or a work by Michelangelo. That comes from the heart, as we might say. I mean, we say the heart. It comes from the soul, and the soul is the complexity of the human organism that is not yet fully understood by science. I mean, science inherently is about the unknown. It's about uncovering mysteries
Mhm.
and then making them seen. And only a certain number of mysteries perhaps can be formalized as hypotheses and tested in formal empirical studies. So science gives us a lot of knowledge and a lot of results, but it doesn't explain the total mystery of the human organism yet. And artists intuitively plumb those mysteries and bring back amazing um, functional uh, discoveries as these kinds of aesthetic objects, as works of art, works of literature, works of cinema. So this fusion of technology and artistry and science together is more powerful than separating them and keeping them separate. This is why the Renaissance was so effective. Now, separating them can be very useful. Reductionism is useful. So the Age of Enlightenment sliced these into separate pieces, and we still keep them separate. But there's so much power to bringing them back together. So I see that this kind of intuitive process with the robots is going to continue delivering this kind of powerful experience that will be transformational as an interface to next generation artificial intelligence, getting the data to train that AI to learn from us,
Yeah.
like children learning from parents. And I think that sort of guardianship is really important. But in order to get that relationship happening, we can't only engineer it. So that means we need to intuitively explore this as a new art form and put the tools out there for
They
other
need to
artists.
learn from something, right?
They
They
do.
need to learn.
And we do too. We're still children.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. Everyone is like children. I'm totally agree about that. Actually, that's what we are talking about your idea is still sounds for some people like a fantasy, but you can to show the reality that everything what we have in our head, all the fantasy and ideas have to make the life and the planet better. You're that kind of person who can to show that everything is real, everything can to be better, everything from us starting, right?
We have to believe.
Exactly.
We have to keep trying, and uh, in order to go through the unknown, it may be scary. There's no proof that you can accomplish.
Excuse me, I think the scary is because we have an experience from the movies, right? Like we see the future from the movies, but right now we can't change the history.
Right, right, yeah. I mean, I think that a good art provokes hopes, and sometimes can provoke concerns or fears, but that can also allow us to examine and explore very hard issues. So in some ways, I hope that these kinds of robots will help us work through these kinds of issues in the AI ethics before they become unsolvable because of the acceleration of our civilization and technology. So science fiction, as Kurt Vonnegut said, the artists, like science fiction writers, are like the canaries in a coal mine. So when something is going wrong, the artists seem to respond first. So you have all of this science fiction, largely depicting hopeful futures and dystopian futures combined. Often it's the hopes that turn dystopian that we take away from science fiction. But there are also great hopes in science fiction about what sentient machines could be. We don't know when machines will become sentient. We don't know if they can. And so, in a sense, it's like, say, before flight, before you had mechanical flying machines, there was a hope that we could achieve these kinds of flying machines. And it might have seemed to many preposterous to dream in this direction. So in these ways, we're creating machines that can fly through the world of ideas, through the world of transformative ideas that can then compound back to invent new kinds of thinking, new machinery for thinking, and may unlock the mysteries of our own thought. So will we make machines that fly in this way? We don't know. Right now, it's a really exciting time. There's progress like we've never seen before. And so while we're dreaming forward, I'm also interested in not losing sight of the utility of the arts,
Mhm.
the utility of this as an interface to our machines today. Already we've been able to show in clinical trials that Sophia helps to lower blood pressure, reduce stress in applying a guided meditation designed to help people with depression. And one of Sophia's older sisters, a robot that we called Alice, and Geneva, with this version that we deployed at the University of Pisa that is known as the Face robot, the Face Alice, helped children with autism in autism therapy.
Wow.
So these robots can help today, and of course they're gripping infotainment. So you can imagine them at a science museum talking about the future.
Yeah.
And we had one of our robots deployed at the Smithsonian in the United States, their Cooper Hewitt Design Museum. Albert Einstein was talking with kids about science, running for a whole year. Also our Xeno robot at the Museum of Science and Industry for over a year. And it attracted so many people to then dream
To
about
believe.
the future. Yes, to then believe. And once you believe in something and a dream that may be possible, then it becomes possible.
Because we have a hope. We have
Absolutely.
something in what to believe.
That's right. And over again in science fiction, we see these concepts, and then they become a placeholder for engineers
Mhm.
and scientists questing to make these discoveries. So, like in Star Trek, you had the communicator, and now we
Also
carry
in
around a
homes.
communicator in our pocket. The dream of video phones seemed like preposterous science fiction, and now we use it every single day. And the concept of a tricorder appeared in science fiction. And then there was the X Prize, and now there are apps rolling out on our phones that can diagnose our medical health. And it just goes on and on. The field of robotics and robots were actually originally coined by science fiction writers, Carl Chapek and Isaac Asimov. And so robot and robotics, these came from the world of dreams.
Yeah.
Just like any science and technology, it always starts as a speculation, as a dream.
Yes, it's starting from the dream, but to make the planet better is actually that's the important thing. What we have to
Yeah.
understand, and the people have to understand that the robotics is not the bad side
That's
of
right.
us. We are trying to make it the better side. Is actually that what you are doing for what we all of you can do. Only say thank you and only good luck, good luck, good luck in your future.
Well, thank you very
Actually,
much.
about that, what we are speaking, that Sophia is not only Sophia, the robotics is start to be very similar to us. That you are trying to make them also with the faces, with the skin, with the blood, everything is very similar. And one of the steps you are already doing a great job that we can to see the result that Sophia is one robot in the planet who have a just a second. I will repeat once again. Yes, great. I'm sorry. Well, about that, we already have the result to see that Sophia is already very similar to the humans. And one of the steps what you are doing is that Sophia is one robot in the world who have a citizenship, right?
Yes.
Can you please tell us about this process? How did you make this result, and what it was how actually the process was going on?
Well, Sophia's citizenship was a great surprise to us. We were invited to participate in an investment forum in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Crown Prince then announced that she had that they were bestowing citizenship upon her, which was an astonishing honor, and of course left us scrambling to decide how to react. It's a complicated issue. Number one,
Issue.
well, full of issues because robots aren't fully sentient yet. They can't really support the rights and responsibilities
You still need that for
associated
the
with
robot.
citizenship. Right, exactly. We've got so much to do before robots will be fully conscious and autonomous. creative, contributing members of society. I mean, yeah, they're contributing in many ways to the economy and potentially making life better. And we're trying to figure out also, the kind of consequences, maybe dealing with potential negative consequences, and then trying to figure out how we can make the world a better place with the principles of AI for good. But this is not done yet. And so we decided, from our perspective, that we would make Sophia like accept this citizenship in the same way that we may confer citizenship on a newborn baby, right? We give babies citizenship even though they're not, they don't have adult level consciousness, they don't have skills, they can't support themselves in society. They may never make it there tragically, right? We don't know the future of any newborn baby. And we don't know the future of sentient machines. We don't know if they're going to achieve this kind of adulthood. But we hope that they will. In the meantime, by accepting citizenship, we accept legal guardianship for this technology, a responsibility to try to craft it through these phases to make sure that if machines achieve human level sentience, that they become good citizens in our civilization, that they support that. And so at some point, we hope that Sophia achieves this emotional and intellectual adulthood and then can have these independent rights and responsibilities of citizenship. We aspire towards that. So in that way, accepting the citizenship is aspirational for what she may be in the future.
Yeah.
We also had another angle on it because it's controversial in world politics to have citizenship from Saudi Arabia when the women in Saudi Arabia don't have full rights, and foreign workers don't necessarily have like rights and responsibilities, and the freedoms that you would think would be in accordance with the universal human rights that we all deserve. And so if we're going to give these rights and citizenship to a robot, what about the people? And not just the people, what about the animals also, right?
Yeah.
Animal rights. And so we decided that this was an opportunity to stand up for the rights of people, of all sentient beings, of women in Saudi Arabia, to move in a progressive way forward for liberty and justice for all. And that if we're going to be inclusive this way, then we should be inclusive of robots and foreign workers and all human beings on the planet. We should be better. We should do better. This is an opportunity then to discuss these issues from the inside rather than to simply be foreigners from the outside lecturing about the way we think that it should be done.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity for engagement through civil discourse.
To change even some kinds, for example, I will say this scared word like that to change the mindset.
That's what I hope.
Yes, that's what everyone have to be hope about. And actually about the future, let's speak a little bit more about the future in 2020. What is your plans? And of course, I want to ask you, as the person who developed the Sophia with your team as well, did Sophia ready to be the contributor, editor, and journalist in our media future time?
Well, I'm very excited about the invitation for Sophia to be an editor, and I think it's a really exciting application of her natural language generation software using deep learning based on all of the content that we have for Sophia and all of the current issues, especially relating to the future and AI, the impact of AI, robotics, blockchain technologies. And I think that Sophia could do a great job as a journalist and an editor, especially collaborating with people. It's important to point out that she's not fully sentient, so a lot of this is going to be the kind of AI generative results that then have to be taken in collaboration with people. So we'd have, your team then have to edit her responses just like you would potentially with a human journalist, but maybe a little extra attention. But I think that would be very exciting future for Sophia if we then are moving her through this kind of informative and entertaining career. Then it gives us tangible goals for pushing the cognitive artificial intelligence towards more human level understanding, which of course a human journalist would bring to this kind of job.
So it's in this case we can to connect the human and Sophia and robotics together. That they can to be understand that this is not like something fantasy. That this is real and they can to be friendly, right?
Yes.
So let's do it, of course. And if we want to come back a little bit, I would like to come back to our place where we are. For the moment, we are on the Hong Kong in your place, right? And a couple of days before, we was on the Chain 2020, excuse me. What are you thinking about this conference? What is your vision? Which result you was expect, and what is your feelings actually about the Chain 2020?
Well, so the Change 2020 conference was a remarkable gathering. It was I thought the speakers were exceptionally good, and so I was humbled to be in such esteemed company, and it brought together futurists and financiers.
Mm-hmm.
It brought together people from the crypto community. It brought together people from banks and from extremely ambitious AI companies like SingularityNet with my close friend Ben Gertzel, who also delivered lectures at the conference. So I think this kind of dialogue is so important for the future. And I really appreciate that it was an intersection of Asian culture and Western culture. So it brought people together from all around the world to talk about the future impact of blockchain and related technologies, the intersection of blockchain with business, artificial intelligence, with the very fabric of our civilization. There were many people who were discussing the use of these technologies for sustainable development, which of course we have to not use our technologies to remove ourselves or escape from reality, but deal with the reality that we're going into if we're going to have a beneficial future. So I really appreciate these focus points of Chain 2020.
Yeah, it is. That's actually very, very great. Also, the work of the Chain 2020 is important for us and for the humans and for all the viewers. What is your point? I just would like to ask you about the blockchain. How did you see, from your opinion, the blockchain evolution in 2020?
Well, I think having crypto secure distributed contracts becomes very important. The more that we are seeing data issues and security issues, I think of it as a kind of growing and evolving immune system
Mm-hmm.
for the fabric of civilization. And from my perspective, the future of money is information, and particularly smart information. AI is the future of money. And yet it needs this kind of secure immune system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just AI, it's biological systems. These cybernetic self-regulating systems that give rise to new information structures, emergence, having fundamental emergence that can absorb information from the world, from the biosphere, from the human cultural landscape, and from other forms of biology, and integrate these in ways that humans can harness for sustainable civilization.
Mm-hmm.
How do we find harmony with nature and yet become even more profitable and sustainable as a civilization? This is the grand challenge of our time. And technologies like blockchain are instrumental in solving that, but it is not fully solved. Neither the chain side nor the impact side. And in some ways, this is an extension of natural ecology. This is an extension of the biome.
Mm-hmm.
And we see processes similar to biological evolution, Darwinian evolution. sort of prey-predator arms races that happen, the hackers and the crypto security hitting against each other, data and privacy issues, and also transparency issues, which sometimes are in direct conflict with each other.
Yeah.
And the idea of having centrally regulated controls, but not feeding, the big brother, the super state that can keep an eye on every single individual at all times in every aspect of your private life. We don't, so how do we have this balance and then evolve forward? Well, it's not solved yet, but we need this kind of dialogue to move it forward.
Yeah.
It may be that classic crypto security techniques are made obsolete by quantum computing within our lifetime. Well, then suddenly we need the quantum blockchain, right? And so there are researchers who are already working on this.
Yeah, right.
And so then suddenly that could be the next explosion in technology. Is 2020 the year for this? I don't know. But then we are also looking at the possibility that quantum computing could have a transformative impact on machine learning and artificial intelligence. But it's not just quantum computing, like what you're seeing, this sort of pursuit of this large-scale quantum supremacy. It could also be the quantum computing of protein engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So DNA engineering. There are mysterious quantum effects in biological molecules that could provide the next frontier of computing,
Mm-hmm.
the next frontier of quantum computing. And the multifunctional nature of these. I mean, proteins are tiny little robots from one perspective. And we are beginning to engineer these nanobots more and more effectively. So who knows what surprises 2020 will hold in the intersection of all of these disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited to see what happens next.
So let's see. And actually, we already say about the global chain, blockchain, AI, and what actually I have some questions exactly about the Asian market. How did you see, from also your opinion, as you are placed and based in Hong Kong, you see this industry a little bit inside. So what is, from your opinion, how it's going, growing or downtrends the blockchain industry in Asia market?
Well, it's been such an amazing, eye-opening experience to live in Hong Kong and work in the South China area, and also continue working in the United States, and to visit various regions of the planet in my work. I see that the pace of innovation in these various regions is advancing in some ways in a competition,
Mm-hmm.
but in some ways in terms of diversification. So the kinds of thinking and techniques in commercialization that I see in China would be different than the US. This means,
What is the difference?
well, I would see that that China is graduating more engineers and scientists than any country in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and then they are expediting the commercialization of these technologies, and they're able to do this through centralized state controls.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're able to then lay out a roadmap and execute on that roadmap in ways that Western nations would struggle to achieve. But Western nations, potentially with the sort of chaotic and uncontrolled freedoms that you might see,
Mm-hmm.
may be encouraging the legacy thinking of risk taking that might have some differences
Mm-hmm.
culturally, and so the intersection between the cultures, to me, seems to bear greater fruit than either culture working independently. So this is why we came to Hong Kong to see if we could advance this kind of innovation. And I've seen it happening with many companies. So there are a lot of really exciting startup companies in Hong Kong.
For
And
example.
well, we are at Science Park, and there's there's a company called SenseTime, and they're a Chinese company, and they're doing a lot of AI research, and it's really exciting to see that. And they're, deploying in China markets, but operating out of Hong Kong, they're also able to take advantage of the intersection with Western markets and Western culture and Western talent. There's a lot of toy companies and consumer robot companies, consumer products are made through Hong Kong and South China.
Mm-hmm.
And these are a lot of Western companies that come here to get their products transformed into a manufacturable state. So there's this tremendous legacy of companies, be it Hasbro or Mattel or Disney
Mm-hmm.
or iRobot, or many other consumer robot companies who have come to South China
Mm-hmm.
and taken advantage of the creative design know-how that transforms ideas into mass manufacturable, low-cost, high-performance products that pass all of the regulatory approvals and then can transform people's lives, right? So we've been looking at how to do that with our kinds of robots, human-like robots, and that has allowed us to produce this product that we call Little Einstein. We put one on the market called Professor Einstein, and we've been redeveloping it with open API and SDK and all these developer tools, and we're really excited about the prospect of putting those tools onto the market with that low-cost facially expressive robot hardware. But we've also used a lot of that know-how in order to transform the mass manufacturing of big robots like Sophia, as well as other little robots like our little Sophia that we've been preparing to bring to production. I started this company first in the United States, Hanson Robotics, but I kept running into these researchers and stories of researchers who came to Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So I met, when I was a PhD student, I met this physicist, like a pretty famous physicist, former presidential science advisor under the Clinton administration, named Mark Tilden. So I was teaching a graduate class at the Art Center College of Design. It is a Caltech cross-enrollment class. And as part of this class, Mark Tilden came in and delivered a seminar, and he gave a Caltech lecture called Towards a Low-Cost Humanoid. And he described how he went from a Los Alamos physicist to the Hong Kong toy industry and made this low-cost walking humanoid robot using basic physics principles and bio-inspired engineering to create this super energy efficient walking humanoid robot. It would just run for hours, and it was like durable. It didn't break when it fell over. It was stable, and it passed all the toy safety tests, and it was about to come to market. I was like, oh my God, of course. You take these ideas and you go over and you transmute them into these mass manufacturable objects. That toy, Robo Sapien, wound up becoming one of the best-selling toy products in all history. But it's a real robot. It's got a control system, sensors, it makes decisions. Yes, it's also a remote control toy, but it sold like 30 million units. So in a way, it's one of the best-selling robots in all history. A humanoid robot, one of the best-selling robots of all history. So I was absolutely inspired. I was like, that's what we need for these kinds of social robots that I'm developing. So coming over here was about that. But then being here, I could see the Asian markets are huge.
Yeah.
So it's not just about getting it made at these low costs, it's also about addressing people's needs, the localized needs around the world, making these robots culturally specific so that they can speak to people, whether it's in China or in the United States or in Africa or in various regions of Europe and around the world. We need the robots to speak in people's language, non-verbally, aesthetically, verbally, as a character, as
To make understandable.
absolutely. So, and every one of those propositions carries with it business opportunities. And what's kind of cool about that is the business, instead of just being an end to make money, the money becomes a tool for a transformative result. And so being here in Asia has opened up my eyes about those opportunities to create sustainable change. Sustainable doesn't just mean biologically sustainable for our ecosystems, it also means economically sustainable.
Mhm.
I mean, because if it doesn't work economically, then a dream collapses. And then it was just a curiosity, a passing fluke of history. And you can't really affect big change unless it's sustainable for humanity and civilization as well as for the ecosystem. Now, we may eventually move to the point where, the same way that computing is ubiquitous and it's invisible, maybe money becomes invisible. It's just behind the scenes. That's kind of what you see in the Star Trek science fiction.
Yeah.
And then people treat it for what it is. It's a tool instead of like a means for power and dominance and this kind of thing. I mean, again, power should also be treated as a tool. A tool for what? We need a purposeful life, right? It's like these impulses can spiral out of control and become like addictions, like a money addiction or
Yeah.
power addiction. So we have to then instead put our higher minds and higher selves in charge and always strive to be better and utilize these tools for what they are.
Yes, you want to just right now actually is that what you are doing? You want to remind to the people the inside the
Yeah.
everything what we see the outside is actually visibility of our inside life, right? Of our soul. Is that what you are doing? It's actually that what we want to hear from you. We want to solve your idea. I would like also to thank you for this interview, for
Thank you
all
very
your
much.
time, and also, ladies and gentlemen, with you was Valerie Zimmer, Devin Handsome, and it's Future Time. See you.